specifying a required field. So up to this point, creating new records, you've just been able to type in whatever you want, fill in whatever you want, and leave things blank wherever you want. We can prevent that from happening by utilizing required fields. And what that just means is if somebody were to create a new record, that new record would have to have that required field filled in for the record to be committed to the database. And a good example here, like they show in the screenshot, is making the account name required. You wouldn't want to add a new account without an account name. So it makes sense to make that a required field. So if I go back over to my account table and then take this into design view, if it ever lets me go back into design view, there we go. And I go to the account name field. I've clicked on it to select it. And you can see that this down here in the bottom part of my options list, there is one called required, and it currently says no. So I currently could create a new record without having an account name. And I don't want it to be like that anymore. So I'm going to select that, hit the pull down, and choose yes. And now I'm going to take this back in datasheet view. And now if I try to create a new record, and I'll just put an account number. I know I've got some other rules in this table already. So you can see account name is a required value. So I cannot create this record. It's not going to let me do it until I put in an account name. Again, I think I have another one that's already required here. So I need to put a city in. And I need to put a state in. That I created before. So anyway, so I need to put in all this information before I can commit this record to the table. And once I finally meet all of the required rules, then it lets me commit it. Once I left that line and it didn't give me an error, that means this is now a new record on the table. So that's how you do that. Specifying a range, you can create a validation rule that lets you only have a range of values. So for instance, maybe I don't want someone to be able to have a current due of negative $1,000 because that just doesn't make any sense. I can have a range of valid values. So I'm going to go and take this into design view. And I'm going to go to current due. And I actually already have this filled in. So if you see down here in validation rule in the bottom part, it says greater or equal to 0 and less than 10,000. So what I was saying here is I wanted to make sure that you didn't have a negative amount that was due, and you also didn't want someone to have a current due more than $10,000 because that's an awful lot. I want to stop a client from getting more free stuff if they're not paying me for their previous stuff. So that's and then you can see here, I've also already filled in validation text that says I don't trust new clients that much. So that will pop up on the screen if you break the validation rule. So it's already here, so I don't have to make any changes right now. I'm going to take this back into datasheet view, and then I'm going to try to change my whatever record that I just created. I'm going to try to say their current due is, $80,000. $800,000, whatever. And you can see that when I attempt to put that value in, it's saying I don't trust new clients that much. So it's not going to let me put in a value like that. They could have $8,000 that they owe me, but they can't have over $10,000. And they can't also have, negative $234. So it just lets you limit the values that are put in, making sure that people aren't putting in invalid things or putting in things that are bad for your business. The other thing that I should tell you is if you ever get in a situation where you're stuck because you can't meet a validation rule and you can't seem to get away from the problem, your escape key really helps. Your escape key just cancels whatever you were attempting to edit at that time. So that can be pretty valuable for you. I can also specify a default value in the same way that I've essentially done the range. Maybe I want to have a default value of, I don't know, amount paid 0 when you create a new record because they haven't paid me anything yet. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I'll take this into design view and I'll go to the amount paid field and then you can see there's a default value here. I'm going to put a default value of 0 in, because when somebody's a new client, they haven't paid me anything. It makes sense. So I'm going to take that back into the datasheet view, and you're going to see that if I try to create a new record, I have to do it in somewhere. Yeah, you can see that when I attempt to complete this record, you can see that amount paid automatically says 0 here for that new record, because it just defaulted for me. I can put something else in. It's not telling me I have to commit it with 0, but it's trying to just make it easier for my data entry by pre-filling in what is probably going to be the most common option. So that's what default value allows for you. I can also specify a collection of legal values. So what this is I can create validation text that says, I am only going to let you commit this record if you have very specific things typed in. I don't use this as much. This is typically something that fits better with a lookup value, but you can limit it. So you may have noticed that I already did this actually with the state field. So I could have done a drop down that said just Illinois or Indiana, or a lookup value that only said Illinois or Indiana, but I went ahead and created a validation rule, and I'll show that to you. So if I take this back into design view again, and I'm going to go to the state field, and you can see that down here, once I select state, down here in the properties area, I have a validation rule that says IN or IL or WI. So it's only going to accept those specific 3 values to be typed into that field. And if it's not one of those 3 fields, it's going to bring up the validation text saying we don't do business here. So again, I don't have to actually do this because it's already been done for me here. But if I take this back into datasheet view and I attempt to create a new record, you saw it earlier because I did it by accident. If I try to put an RI, it gives me that validation rule that says we don't do business here. So it is allowing the person to type in whatever they want, but if they don't type in one of the right things, it's going to give them an error. And that's why having a limited lookup field where you just give them the options that are valid makes a lot more sense. But there are times where this does make sense as well, so it's good to understand it. I can specify formatting. This is nice if you want to pre-format a field so that the person can type in something simple and then it can take on the proper format. A good example of that is phone number. Instead of having them type, 515-555-5555, you can put that stuff in for them so that they just have to straight up type in the numbers. It keeps your database cleaner and it makes it easier for your data entry people. So I believe, I already have a phone number field here over at the right, but I'll show you how that's formatted. I go into design view again. You can see the phone number field right here. I already have the format structured here where I have the parentheses around the first 3 characters, and then I've got a dash between the second 3 and the third 4, our normal phone formatting here in the US. So this allows me to make it easier on my users. So when I take this back into datasheet view, and I've gotten a phone number for this guy, I'm just going to type in 555-555-5555. You can see when I tab away that it takes on that nice formatting that we're used to seeing when we look at phone numbers. So pretty nice. I had talked about this earlier, pretty similar to what I showed you earlier, where you can have a lookup field, but you can also allow it to be multi-valued. So when you're going through that wizard, there was that checkbox right at the end that allowed you to choose more than one option if you wanted to. So in this case, again, this database is already set up with this for me. There is a field called season here over on the right. I'm going to go ahead and delete that field and then go ahead and recreate it so you can see it created, because it's kind of important enough to see it from the ground up. So what I'm doing with the season is I'm going to track which seasons these businesses do business with me. So it's fall, spring, summer, winter, 4 seasons. But I can choose multiples because they might do business with me more than 1 season per year. So first I'll get rid of that season field. So let me just delete it. Okay, so I've got rid of it. Now I'm going to recreate it. So a field called season. And then like we did before, I'm going to choose lookup wizard. And I'm going to say I will type in the values that I want. Next. And then I'm going to do winter, spring, summer, fall. So I've got the 4 options. I'm going to hit next. This time I'm going to choose limit to list, and I'm going to choose allow multiple values. I chose limit to list because there's only 4 seasons. It would be dumb for somebody to put anything else in there, and the allow multiple values means I can choose multiples when I enter my data. I hit finish. I once again have my new season field, and I'm going to just go ahead and run this table now. And I've got my season field over here on the right again. And now when I want to add some season information, if I hit this pull down, I get this field option. So I can say, well, this business does business with me in the winter, spring, and summer. Hit OK, and you can see it formats it for me in the field correctly. This company does spring, summer, fall. Maybe this one just does winter. So it allows me to choose one or multiples to get that multiple pieces of data in a single field in my table. Updating a form to reflect changes in the table. You can create a form at any time. However, if you update your table, your form doesn't automatically update. I'm actually not going to visualize this because you should be able to do this pretty easily, but you can see that there's an option for adding existing fields, and you can just drop them onto the form. So let's say you had a table that only had 3 fields on it, you created a form, and then you added a 4th field to the table. You can just take that form into design view and add those new fields. I can also include totals in my data sheets, and this is just a nice visual thing. It doesn't actually add anything to the database itself. It just lets you total up some things on a table. So if I go over to my table, we already did something like this in queries, but if I go to my table, I'm on my home tab, and you can see there's a totals option here, and then a new item appears down here at the bottom. I can now sum up information. So, hey, look, I've gotten $281,000, and I am still owed $33,900. Now, again, this data isn't actually committed to the database itself. It's just a visual for you to look at when you're looking at the database table. Maybe I want to know how much, on average, I'm owed from each one of my clients. So I can quickly change that and see that I'm owed about $2,100 from each of my clients. So just a nice way to look at numbers quickly in your database. I can change grid lines. I guess that's an option if you want. I think most people, when they work with a database, are used to this kind of view, but you can make changes to that. So if you want to go down here, oops, I am sorry, that's not correct. This button. You can tell it's not something I use very often, so I'm having a hard time spotting it. Here it is, way over here on the right. So you can see I can change my table to look horrendous if I want to. I can choose to just have vertical grid lines. It's an option, I guess. So anyway, this is stuff you can do. Again, most people keep it pretty standard when they're working with a database because it's easy to look at, but you can do something different if you're a different visual type person to look at things a little bit differently. I have a hard time even looking at that, frankly. But anyway, so you can make adjustments there if you want to for your grid lines. So that's over here on the right. I can also hit this pull down and have a window that lets me make more adjustments if I want to. So that's how you adjust that. You can change font colors, you can change the font itself, you can change background colors. These are all things that you can do in pretty much any Windows program, but you can do that, again, on the Home tab. These same options, nothing surprising here. If I wanted to make the text red, I could. But again, that's not something you commonly see with database usage, but you have those options there, or you can change the background color. I would choose something fairly light here because you start losing your grid lines if you start messing around too much. But you have those options available. Or again, if you want to change the font, you don't have to use the standard Calibri. You have a bunch of different options there. Okay, multiple values on a single row in a query. So this option only really works, and the reason we haven't seen it previously in our previous weeks of queries is because it only works with those multi-valued fields that I just introduced, those ones where you can have multiple selections in a specific field. It allows you to break them out in a query. So I will go ahead and create a query. So I'm going to create a new query in Design View, just like we have previously. It's going to be a select query this time. So I'm going to create and then query design. And I'm just going to include the account table. And my new field here that we hadn't really had previously is my season value. And you can see under season, there's both season and season.value. I'm just going to throw account name in there. And I'm going to throw season in there, just so you can see what it looks like. So just running these two simple things, I'm going to run this query. And you can see it looks just like it did on the table, where you have account name and season. And you can see the multiple values for season. I'm going to do a couple of things here. Let's say is not null. Forgetting my syntax. I finally got my syntax here. I had to type in is not null. The capitalization matters here. So what this is saying is only give me records back where there's a value in the season field, because I wanted to keep it specific to the ones where I'd actually typed something in. So again, when I run this, you can see here that it's only showing those records that have something in the season field. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, instead of using season, where you could see it all in one row, I'm going to use season.value, which is this one. And you're going to see the difference here. I'm going to get rid of this field. So now I just have account name and season.value. And now when I run it, you can see what it does is it breaks out that multi-value field into individual rows. So it just essentially repeats the account name 3 times for each one of the values in the account season values subset of values. So in the database, this is only one row here. But here it's allowing me to break it out in the query. There are times when this can be valuable, where you're kind of packing data down into a single field, but you need to break it out for a query or to look at it in some specific fashion. So just be aware that's available for you. I guess a good example here would be I could have sorted this by account season so that I could see all of the accounts that had were my customers during the spring. That'd be a good example of that. Okay, that's where I just showed you the multiple values and multiple rows where you use the dot value option. Okay, referential integrity. This can be important in the cases where you have multiple tables interacting or tables that are joined with each other. And in this database, we have the account table joined with the account manager table on the account manager number. What referential integrity does for you here is you can require that the values, if you change a value in the account manager table, the associated value has to be changed on the account table, or you can prevent someone from adding an account that has an account manager that doesn't exist. So what you're doing is you're enforcing this interaction to continue working correctly between two tables. Referential integrity can be kind of a deep topic, so we're just touching on it here. But this database already has referential integrity set up between these two tables, so I'm just going to show you how that was done. So if I go, I'm going to close out of all these tables that I've been messing around in and queries and such. There we go. Okay, so to get to the referential integrity area, you have to go to Database Tools, and you have to go to the Relationships button. And this is how you can show the links between different tables. And we have a link between the account manager and the account table. This is something that I set up on a previous lecture of this, but you can see the account manager number has a link to the account manager number on the account table. Now, my zoom is really weird on this. This is a 1 to infinite relationship, which means each account manager number can be attached to multiple accounts, but each account can only have one account manager. So that's the one-to-many type relationship. And I can set that up by double-clicking on the link between the two. And you can see that there is, they're saying this is the account manager field is on both tables called the same thing. And these are the two tables, account manager and account. And here's where you can enforce referential integrity, and you can cascade updates on related fields. So this is where if I updated my account manager number, then it will automatically update that account manager's number on the account table. So I don't have to try to make the updates in both places and risk making a mistake. It's also not going to allow me to delete an account manager that has associated accounts. So if I'll show you that. If I go over to the account manager table and I try to delete Karen Morowski, it's not going to let me. See, it says the record cannot be deleted or changed because the table account includes related records. So if I wanted to get rid of Karen, if I was trying to fire Karen and get her out of my database, I would need to then disassociate all of the accounts from Karen before I could delete the account manager, because otherwise I would be breaking referential integrity. So that's one of the advantages of it. It prevents breaking the database by deleting stupid things or making changes in stupid ways. It's just a control that you have over your database. The other thing that I want to show here, and I think it's probably on one of the last slides, but I'll do it now since I'm looking at the table, is because I have created that relationship between the two tables, the one-to-many relationship, I can look at the account manager table, and this is a really cool feature. For each one of my account managers, I can hit this little plus on the left edge, and I can see all of the records on the account table that are associated with this account manager. So it's allowing me to view both tables at the same time in this view of just the account manager table. Now this data is not actually on the account manager table. It's just showing you the link to the other table in a, I would say, a really nice view to be able to see that link between the tables. So, but that's something that only happens when you have that referential integrity link between the tables. And that's called the sub-data sheet. So that's what I was talking about just now. Okay, that's everything I have for this lecture and everything that I have for this semester. As always, if you have any questions, please hit me up and just make sure that you get the rest of your assignments done before we run out of semester.